Patreon Q&A number 124. I want to thank all 123 of my amazing patrons. Guys, thank you so much for the continued support. And to everyone else listening, there's going to be spoilers for every series I'm talking about, so tread carefully. Goliath Xanatos asks, Garou is still currently underground. If he breaks out from the rubble and sees Blast, would he immediately attack him, sensing his immense strength? Or would the story proceed as shown in the webcomic with him facing off against Black/Golden S? So that's a great question, and as I've been saying in these Q&As lately, anything is possible at this point. I clearly didn't expect Blast to show up in chapter 139, and it's very likely that nothing matches up with the webcomic anymore, although I think, you know, the ultimate end result of Saitama versus Awakened Garou, I mean, that kind of has to happen, I suppose. But next week, I'm gonna make a video entirely dedicated to Blast, just getting all of my thoughts and all of the theories and the speculations out in just one place, and one of them is when I think that he's going to come to the surface with Saitama, Flashy Flash, and Monako. And I think it's going to happen around the time of when it seems like Awakened Garou has finally won, most likely. So it could happen at that point, and then we'd see how like Awakened Garou would react to Blast. But also it could be before that. It could be like when we see like pre-Awakened Garou, you know, like the Garou that like encounters Fubuki. So if it's that Garou, I could see him like reacting to Blast possibly in a similar fashion to Flashy Flash. And then of course that would lead to Garou being jobbed just like Flashy Flash was. Because at this point, I don't think anything below Awakened Garou stands a chance against Blast, honestly. So it makes more sense if that version of Garou were to job to Blast or just be emasculated by him in some way. However, if it's Awakened Garou, then I think the odds of him attacking Blast are less likely, because that would mean that he would either job to Blast, which would totally deflate any of the hype that we had going into Awakened Garou versus Saitama, or he would like clash with Blast or something, or it's possible it could arrive in like this middle ground where it's like, oh wow, Awakened Garou is pretty powerful, but wow, Blast is, you know, a lot more powerful too. It's like, what would happen if they really wanted to go against each other? Or they just have like a verbal back and forth possibly. At this point, it seems like it's possible that Garou might just, at the minimum, just see Blast, you know? Not really sure if there's gonna be an extended interaction after that. But as for your other question about how Tatsumaki and Psykos would react to seeing Blast, going back to what I said about when I think Blast is going to show up, if that does pan out, it's very likely that Tatsumaki and Psykos won't see Blast because they'll be incapacitated to some extent at that point, which can hold off that whole Tatsumaki Blast reunion for a much later point down in the story. But if Blast does show up at a point where they're still conscious and they could see him, I think that would be super interesting, because I think we're all really curious to see how Tatsumaki would react to current day Blast. I think we can all agree that, you know, it would probably bring out a side of Tatsumaki that we probably haven't seen yet. You know, the closest that we've seen to Tatsumaki kind of having admiration, or at least dare I say attraction to somebody, was like when King showed up to the S-Class meeting before the Monster Association raid. So it could be like an amplified version of that, if anything. But them having like a conversation or something, I think is unlikely, simply because it would be better to just push that to later on, you know? And then for your last question about does Blast showing up in the manga right now signal the end of the story coming soon? I don't think so. I think at this point, the manga is pretty much safe. It's going to continue very likely just as long as the webcomic is going to, or at least, you know, kind of relative to that. Yeah, I was worried about the manga possibly ending prematurely a couple months ago, but given the developments of the last few chapters, I'm thinking it's safe, and it's probably going to go on for like another 10 years or something like that. You know, somewhere around there, possibly. Angry Bones asks, why was the Ancient King in the anime worried about the Subterraneans? Considering they seem to be so weak, does he have some kind of link to Saitama's dream? I don't think the Ancient King has any kind of link to Saitama's dream. And also, the Subterraneans aren't weak. The Subterranean King is listed as a demon in the Hero Encyclopedia. It's just that they seem weak compared to Saitama, just like pretty much, you know, 99.9% of the cast. The Subterraneans as a whole seem like a pretty formidable faction. We did see them in their zombie forms when Phoenix Man like resurrected them and they, you know, encountered with Child Emperor and all that stuff. So I guess they were, you know, no chumps, at least in the grand scale of like monster stuff. At least, you know, in the demon range of things. Beowolf asks, do you think Blue was a cyborg created by Blast? No, but I mean, it's possible. The way that I saw the eyes sequence in the webcomic was that he was given contact lenses by like Aramin and Destro because he specifically asked them to like work on them for him. So I don't think those are like cybernetic eyes or anything. I think they just gave him like robotic contact lenses that aids in his battle. Also, considering that like, you know, he has the same eyes as Blast, I think that pretty much confirms that they very are likely biological father and son. And I'll talk about all of this in my video I'm gonna make next week about Blast. But the energy manipulation stuff that Blue can do also kind of lines up with, you know, like the black hole stuff that Blast can do, I suppose. And then for your second question, how do you think the manga version of Homeless Emperor having his powers taken from God is going to play out? So more or less kind of like the same way in the web comic. I think we're probably going to get more exposition from Homeless Emperor possibly when Zombie Man is questioning him about God. But as for us seeing like the, I suppose, tangible version of God, or just what we saw at the end of chapter 38, I think we're going to see, you know, a full reveal of that, and then he's just gonna, you know, take Homeless Emperor's soul pretty much. Boxsteam asks, do you think Blast knows how powerful Saitama is? Great question, and I'm really unsure. I was like analyzing, you know, chapter 39 to try to figure out this, like, Blast, does he know about Saitama? Is he worried about him? Does he know how strong he is? And honestly, the verdict's still out at this point. I mean, clearly he knows Flash because he's an S-class hero, but he didn't say Saitama, didn't say anything about, you know, his ranking or his name or anything, so it's really too difficult to say right now. I mean, it seems like Blast has a good understanding of things in general, so it's possible that like he does know about Saitama, but maybe he's not worried about him because he knows he's a good guy, maybe, or he's just completely oblivious to the fact that maybe he thought Saitama was like Flash's sidekick or something. I don't know. Delamante asks, do you think Fushiguro will eventually have a stronger technique than summoning Maharaga? And if so, what do you think it will be? I don't know if there's going to be something stronger than summoning Maharaga. I think if anything, he's going to exercise him, and then he'll be able to use him, you know, how he uses the other Shikigami, because that's the whole, you know, big aspect of Maharaga. No one's ever been able to exercise him or tame him. So I think that will be one of Fushiguro's big power-ups, I guess. But aside from that, I don't think we've seen his maximum technique yet, so he still has that. Geruda asks, do you think Blast had some crazy fights while recovering those cubes, considering the damage done to his suit? So yeah, I mean, I guess he's had to have, right? I mean, why else would he have the damage on his suit? Why else would he have the scar on his face? Again, I'm gonna be talking about all of this stuff in my Blast video next week, but it's very likely that he might have had battles with the people who have accepted the deal from God, considering he's going after the cubes. So God just made those guys so powerful that they were able to challenge Blast, or it came from the ninja leader possibly, or maybe he's tied to that stuff. Joshua D asks, do you think Genos will touch the cube, talk to God, and make a wish to either become strong enough to fight the cyborg he's looking for or to find the cyborg? I don't think so. I don't think Genos is going to be tied to this storyline. I mean, could be wrong, but I think he's mainly just going to stick to the same path that he's on. I originally did think that Genos could have been the Mad Cyborg before all the Drive Knight reveal stuff, but now I'm, you know, pretty sure that Drive Knight is the Mad Cyborg, but then again, what do I know? I thought Blast was the Bearded Worker. L asks, Blast isn't the Bearded Worker, feels bad, man. I wanted that reveal as well. Maybe Drive Knight isn't the defector or the leader of the organization, and we could both be wrong. So him being the leader of the organization, you know, maybe not, but I do think he's affiliated with them. And just aside from that, I just think that he's the Mad Cyborg. Again, I was wrong about Blast being the Bearded Worker, so maybe it's not the case, but I don't know. I just think it makes way more sense Drive Knight being the Mad Cyborg at this point. Legandaryus asks, how powerful would Frankie become if he got the Iron Man blueprint? So do you mean like the MCU or from the comic? Better suited to answer the MCU side of things. So are you talking about like the Mark V? I'm pretty sure that's the one that we see in Endgame or Infinity War. So if he had those, he would be insane. You know, one of the strongest in the One Piece verse possibly if he had those. But if he just had like standard, you know, like Iron Man 1 through 3 blueprints, then, I mean, he'd still be pretty darn powerful at that point. Think about like a flying pacifista with like more powerful firepower, I suppose. And then your second question, how powerful would someone in the One Punch Man world be if they had the power of determination from Undertale? So I haven't played Undertale, I had to look up this ability, and apparently, I guess you're able to like exist in a soul form after you're defeated. At least that's what I'm taking away from the definition of this. So like if a monster or somebody was, you know, killed or something, and then they were able to exist in some kind of astral soul form or something like that, I mean, that would be pretty powerful, I suppose, right? But it all depends on how that interacts with the real world. Are they intangible at that point? Can they still be defeated after that? A lot of unknowns, but just the fact to exist after being killed would be pretty significant, I suppose. Little Ferrari asks, now that Blast was introduced in chapter 139, do you think his introduction in the webcomic will be different? Yeah, I mean, it obviously has to be different at this point, and I do agree that it's going to have something to do with Blue, considering he's pretty prevalent right now. Blast keeps getting talked about, so I'm sure that it's going to tie into that stuff, and it's very likely that Blast may introduce the element of the cube, you know, into the webcomic as well. Maybe that's how we go into the final arc. You know, after the Neo Hero stuff wraps up, Blast is like, okay, now we need to focus on this cube stuff. This is what has to do with Shibawa's prophecy, possibly, and then that what leads us into the final, you know, really long arc of the, you know, One Punch Man, possibly. Mr.Awsome asks, could this not be the original Blast? I mean, I'm thinking that it is Blast, and the hair and stuff, that just comes from him being older. I don't think there's anything else going on beneath the surface here. I don't think there's like a duplicate, or as you say, a mantle. I just think this is just straight up, you know, the Blast that we've always known. And he's always kind of been the same height. At least that's the way that I see it. And your second question, who would win in a fight? Pig God with an indestructible muzzle or Metal Bat without fighting spirit? That's a super interesting question. I guess Metal Bat without fighting spirit, right? Because he's still pretty powerful, fast, and agile. And he can outwork Pig God, I suppose, but like Pig God's pretty durable. He still has his regeneration ability. Then again, Pig God wouldn't be able to eat, and I'm sure that would weigh him down. So Metal Bat would probably take it. Paxson D asks, Saitama didn't have the same kind of impressive reaction he did with Boros and Awakened Garou when Blast like appeared behind Flashy Flash. So what do you think his impressions of Blast were? I mean, it appears that Saitama wasn't worried or impressed with Blast. I mean, he kind of just was like, hey, you're just a dude. But maybe it just didn't affect him that much because he himself just toyed with Flashy Flash in a similar fashion. Or maybe Saitama just sees Blast as like, you know, somebody who is strong and he doesn't really need to say it or acknowledge it. But I think maybe they're just trying to slow build this whole relationship with Blast and Saitama possibly before we get more insight into either of their opinions of each other. Samurai asks, given the recent events of the My Hero manga, do you still think the series is going to end soon? No. I think, given how things are playing out, especially at the last couple chapters, and the foreseeable storylines, I think we have at least a minimum of another year of the manga. I mean, it's probably going to be longer than that, but I'm just saying at the bare minimum, I think that there's going to be at least like another 30, 40 chapters before he can, I don't know, conceivably wrap up the story without it being rushed, right? I mean, there's plenty of more stuff to go in at this point, so I wouldn't be worried about that stuff anymore. I mean, just me taking a guess, I would say we have like at least another 3 or 4 or 5 years left, possibly. Your second question, Blast versus Kizaru in terms of battle and just terms of raw speed, I think Blast is way above Kizaru at this point. I mean, just, you know, from what we saw of him in 139, that's way more impressive than anything I've seen from Kizaru, in my opinion. Your third question, how would Blast do against Awakened Garou and Boros? Way too hard to say for Boros right now. I honestly have no idea because we don't have a grasp of how Boros stacks up with everybody else yet. I don't think we ever really will. But as for Awakened Garou, I would say that he's probably not on Blast level. I mean, granted, we haven't seen him in the manga yet, but his webcomic version just doesn't seem like he's quite there, especially if you compare like his battle with Flashy Flash to Blast's encounter with Flashy Flash. And then your fourth question, what would Vash's rank be in My Hero and One Punch Man? He'd be top 10 in My Hero for sure, and then maybe he would be bottom of the S class in One Punch Man. I mean, he's, you know, nothing too outrageous compared to the other S-class heroes, but when he fully unlocks the angel arm, you know, and gets to the big thing, that's like definitely dragon level stuff, probably. And your last question, Blast versus Plus Ultra Shigaraki. I don't think Shigaraki has a chance against Blast at this point. Azzy asks, have you ever played the Yakuza series of games, and what are your thoughts? I've never played a Yakuza game, but I've seen plenty of footage of it on YouTube, and it looks awesome. It looks like a game that I would probably have a lot of fun playing. I was thinking about getting the newest one that came out like 2 or 3 months ago, but I just wound up not getting it. But I'll probably be playing it in the future, like if I'm bored enough. Sean H asks, who's winning, Godzilla or Kong? So I am gonna watch this movie. I'm kind of hyped for it, but I don't think either of them are gonna have a definitive win. It's probably gonna be like Batman versus Superman, where like, you know, something interrupts the fight, which is probably gonna be Mechagodzilla, I guess, and then they have to team up to defeat him, or they team up to fight some mutual enemy. That's usually how things go with this. I mean, I'm sure they'll have it make it seem like, oh, Godzilla could have won, or King Kong could have won, but it just seems like we're not gonna have like, you know, the definitive winner is this guy. It's just gonna be like, oh, we have to team up. And now we became friends because we had to, you know, a common enemy. Snowpeas asks, Baba Booey. Hey, I agree, Snowpeas, as always, Baba Booey. Thanks again for dropping a little Baba Booey in the Q&A this week. Steven asks, what if Orochi is still alive and he landed where Garou is and now they're getting a rematch? I wouldn't be mad at that. I think that would be pretty cool, but how strong could Orochi possibly be at that point? I mean, he would certainly be nerfed, right? And it wouldn't be that good of a redemption for Garou. It is very possible that that happens, but to me, it just looks like Orochi is definitely dead at this point. Wolfire54 asks, what if Blast is reverse engineering the cubes and he gets power from them? That's a possibility too, but I don't know. I kind of just think that Blast just inherently has this power that he has, whether it be like some kind of advanced Esper manipulation or some kind of energy manipulation, and that's simply because Blue seems to have hereditarily, you know, received Blast's abilities, right? So unless Blast, you know, reverse engineered this cube stuff into him and then could pass it on to his child, which I guess is a possibility, but I don't know. I just kind of want Blast to just not have had this power come from the cubes, because also it seems like he hasn't accepted the deal from God, so I don't know. I mean, anything's on the table at this point, but I will agree that there are definitely way more parallels to the Skull Knight now than ever, and it seems like, you know, maybe one was inspired by the Skull Knight with Blast. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. And then for your second question, who did Blast remind you of? If there's any other characters that came to mind. So Doctor Strange, because he has like the double, you know, rock horn signs, and that's kind of what Doctor Strange does. And also when he's charging up like his black hole thing, the spirally, you know, energy stuff that comes off is very similar to when, like, you know, Doctor Strange does the, you know, his teleportation portal thing. Zapphod B asks, will Fubuki awaken any latent Esper abilities to become stronger, or have seen her limits? No, we have not seen Fubuki's limits yet. I do think she's going to have a power up in the future. I mean, she already kind of has when she was going against Psykos. I mean, it wasn't really a power up, it was just revealing what she was truly capable of, but I do think that she's gonna get more offense and just overall become a better Esper as the series goes on for sure. And I wouldn't be surprised if she eventually becomes S-class. And then for your second question, will Suiko join the Hero Names of Victim Association if she's given a bad name like Kung Fu Airhead or Sloppy Drunk Fighter? It's very possible that that could happen, but I just think that she's going to be associated with Saitama regardless, either just following him around like Genos does, or, I mean, if she does get the bad name, she'll like forcefully join that association just so she's closer to Saitama. But that's pretty much it for the video today, guys. Once again, I want to thank all 123 of my incredible patrons. I appreciate the support, guys. Thank you so much. And to everyone else listening, if you would like to be in next week's Q&A, simply check out the Patreon. The $5 tier will give you access to this video. And if you haven't already, please subscribe as well. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.